The next presentation, and Murel Truu, here you are, expert from Tallinn University of Technology. You are involved with several projects at TalTech, focusing on climate resilient renovation and flood risk management. So, floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. It's now possibility to continue from excellent coral yoga and waking up to proceed back to the bleach corals being silent and steady. But I tried to get my presentation starting. And here we are. I present the BuildEST project, working in TalTech, and the ideas in the slides are compiled by me and my colleague, Professor Targo Kalamäes. And the session here should cover the policy in comparison to international examples. Then I think that we do quite a lot which has been spoken about in the international examples already. And if I would have known that Scott is doing such an excellent presentation before, showing the international context of vulnerability of buildings to climate risks, I would have maybe skipped the prelude, but I still will go through it by using the example of Venice and the case, which is a symbolic of heritage being really in a climate crisis. The sea level rise, the extreme precipitation events have caused such situations that the boardwalks are not anymore temporary in Venice. They are steady there. The St. Peter's Basilica has been damaged a lot by flooding. The Venice Lagoon is something which is trying to keep the seawater outside from the protected islands and has built a really elaborate engineered system to keep the water from pressuring the heritage. It has been costing 6 billion euros to create something like that. In addition, the St. Peter's Basilica has been surrounded by glass barriers to keep the water outside. These have cost 5 million euros. The renovations, the restorations of the artwork and the interiors have also cost millions due to the flood damage and different kind of innovative solutions, flood control using automated weirs and interfaces. It's all being applied, but Venice is still sinking, seawater is still rising. So yeah, that's a symbol of heritage being under climate attack or climate risk. We don't have here in Estonia Michelangelo or Renaissance wonders, but we do also have similar problems in a maybe more modest scale. So yeah, so we have the climate anxiety. When just thinking what is climate change, whether it has happened before or whether we are experiencing something unexpected now, when you just try to understand it and look from internet what is there, then yeah, there is probably millions of different maps colored red and claiming that we are in danger. All the trajectories head high. The models we have, they don't correspond to what is actually happening. The oceans, Scott can probably explain much more about it. The oceans act in a manner that no climate models can cope with. So it's really something to be anxious about. And then when we were listening that the heritage community was really happy about the success in the last COP, that climate actions and climate policy now acknowledges the heritage-based adaptation, then climate scientists made really really alarming note about we have exceeded very many tipping points, so it's a really bad situation now. So yeah, it's easy to be anxious about climate, and there is so many words that get mixed up. There is the hazards, there are the risks, there the vulnerability, there is damage, consequences. So it's easy to get messed up what is actually needed to be done. So yeah, when we think about buildings and climate risks to buildings, then how we can get from the understanding that there is a lot of more energy in the atmosphere and a lot of more water in the atmosphere and the higher temperatures, how we can get back to this level of insulation and understanding what is the exact corner of what building. So the transition from there to there, it's a lot to think about. But yeah, construction climate, it's a bit now more simple than all these big climate models and risk assessments. We depend on the sun, but the sun can also be quite annoying when you are overheating in your building. It can be damaging to materials, the wind loads, the soil mechanics can be harmed by the moisture can affect materials in the building envelopes, so forth, so on. So if you think about the outdoor climate and construction, then it affects the way where the building should be built, how it is placed, what is the construction of the superstructure, what technical systems the building would need, and so on. But it's for the new construction. And when thinking about how this is considered in the engineering, then different elements of the building have different construction climate calculated. So for the Estonia, we have the wind roses, we have the precipitation ISO lines, we have different kind of temperature ISO lines, and it needs to be understood that the construction climate is not the average climate, but it's actually the consideration of different extremes, because building can't be constructed to withstand average winds, but it has to withstand extreme winds. And when now thinking about what is the climate risk to buildings, the climate parameter is only one part. So what happens from the climate perspective, but from the climate change perspective, it's only the one side of the impact. Also, the building itself is coming to play, as well as the location it is. So every flood, even though if it's reported from the European Emergency and Disaster Information Service, isn't a disastrous event. This kind of flood is something really happy for the residents of Soomaa. But yeah, how we can climate-proof the buildings? When thinking about new construction, we can't change the climate, but we can change the where we build and how we build. For renovations, we can change the climate, but we can change how where we build, but we can change how we renovate, or we can decide how we renovate. But in terms of heritage buildings, we also can't decide how we renovate, because there is regulations, there is limitations. And the vulnerability of a specific building in terms of climate hazards, it depends from what the building is used, for what whether it's the residential building and people stay there whole day long, or it's just an industry building, whether there is a lot of assets, how many basement floors there are, whether they can be flooded, what kind of materials are used, what kind of constructions are applied. So different kind of aspects can make building vulnerable. Plus, what happens inside the building. When we even think that how the people within the building can react to the incidents of climate hazards, or what are the properties within the buildings, whether there are unique artworks. This also makes a difference whether we consider building a vulnerable or not. And thinking about these things, typically heritage buildings have several aspects that can make them more vulnerable. Some examples from Estonia, not St. Peter's Basilica, but their wooden architecture, our industrial architecture turned into residential buildings. But what we see here, we see overheating, we see moisture-related damages, we see freeze-thaw cycles. Edinburgh sees them less, we see them more. And of course, the pluvial flooding, the coastal flooding. And those both as a combined events as well for many cities in Estonia. What can be done? We can think that maybe it goes away, not do anything. And as Kadri previously said, that in terms of energy performance or climate proofing, in terms of reduction of this heat loss, we might think that it's safe to wait a little, and maybe there is better options to cut energy costs in the future. Then typically climate hazards are something that we need to react now, because if you already have experienced some kind of damage events, then we can believe that they get worse. So for what we do adapt for, do we do it as a coping solution that we just try to live with it and maybe select another building? Do we somehow apply the incremental adaptation strategy, or can we transform? And do we think about the future and something that happens later, or we think only on the previous incidents and experienced damage? So there is different possibilities to reduce the risk, and understanding that the traditional measures can be also very useful, very efficient. Then there are also a lot of methods that could help also from more modern applications and more innovative style. So thinking about now more specifically in terms of flood risk, we can think about behavior change, we can think about changing properties, we can think about changing buildings, but of course we can think about the catchment scale and the city space scale. When looking for the actual measures to go after, the policy side now in Estonia requires for the grant-funded renovations to apply climate adaptation measures. And it is typical that this requirement just results in long list of different paperwork that say about very general ideas about climate adaptation, but don't actually point out what needs to be done. And we at Buildest try to prepare more specific guidelines and actually have done also for regular buildings this climate proofing guideline for checking whether renovation solution is climate proof, and also prepare guidance on flood relief for buildings. So in terms of heritage buildings, there is, of course, more limitations, but many methods typical for regular buildings also apply here. And just thinking about the specific cases, how to mitigate climate risk, owners want to know answers which are specific to their conditions. So it is too few to say that, yes, you can use flood barriers, but if I have a building like that, where and which kind, it's good to know that you should have a higher first floor, this Sokal in Estonia. But in this building, can I raise the building, or would it be possible to lower the street? So what is the actual solution? And when selecting those, it is necessary to understand that, the climate change is already happening. The methods are there, but you make a decision, you need to understand how much time do you have, how much money do you have, how much space do you have, and then what is allowed. And when weighing those the different options, it is understandable that every case is unique, but the decision-making has to be understandable, and the principles which guide the decisions should be understandable and similar to everybody. I conclude maybe here that in heritage buildings, we see a lot of solutions that could be applied to any new construction. The plinth heights, the spatial considerations, unheated attics for overheating. These kind of solutions are really the core things that could be highlighted, that let's use them, and this heritage-based adaptation is really necessary for all new buildings. But for the already heritage buildings that already deteriorate and that face already constant damage risks, we really need adaptation solutions, and there are also ideas that if you see that the original, the traditional solutions really keep on deteriorating, then we need to understand it's not preserving value to constantly restore them, but we need to think whether there is a transformative or regenerative solution to keep the value. And yeah, I think that the owners of heritage buildings are not expected to bear greater maintenance burden, even though maintenance surely is something that keeps buildings well and keeps buildings to last, but it shouldn't be greater than ordinary buildings. So, thank you.
Very nice to hear that technical university is ready and helping much about cultural heritage to keep. My question, how you are feeling? Are heritage specialists also ready to work and have a good dialogue with technical university?
In the charter of heritage buildings renovation, which is one result of the Heritage Home project Kadri also spoke about, we have climate adaptation as one key domain, which is discussed in the charter, and for facilitating that topic, we have collaborated. But yeah, I think that it is really necessary to have discussions on the scale that Üllar was explaining, because this general understanding that we need to adapt for changing climate and we need to preserve the heritage for the changing in the context of changing climate. This is something which we all relate to and which we all agree on, but then we argue on the actual material and we argue on the actual building detail. So the discussion has to be that level, and we shouldn't argue in front of building owners. We should discuss in other spaces.
Yeah, so, argumentation is very important. So we find true. That's true. But questions, yeah, Ave?
Just one comment that energy efficiency improving is mitigation action. So in that sense, these are two different topics to talk about.
Actually,
mitigation. Yeah.
I see that why building renovation in the renovation marathon project I represent here includes the climate adaptation topic is something that is the fact that we can't renovate several times. Estonia is too poor to renovate for climate-proofing, climate adaptation, and for climate mitigation. So we need to do once only.
And exactly this cost of the renovation should be part of that. Then you know that what is the end product there, that taking account the whole life cycle assessment and so on. But fantastic, because adaptation we all need to work hard on that. So.
And sometimes I must say that when we struggle with the fact that the owners are not too eager to renovate in Estonia. We understand that the owners don't want to take high loans due to the war situation in Ukraine and like the situation we are living, the multi-crisis. But if you have water in your basement and if your corner is molding, and then you start to think about renovation. And when already you get the first trigger to start thinking about the renovation, you should also already start thinking about also energy performance and circularity and all the other aspects which come to mind.
So, other questions?
Thank you so much. So many good ideas. And my question is, I have half a century thought about the restoration, the regeneration of architecture, and more than 10 years thought how to restore my own property. The only question is a question of money and question of knowledge, of course. And my question is, I quite understand the consensus and good ideas in middle level, but how you can exchange ideas with higher level climate ministry. If we can't change the oceans and if we can't change, how can we cooperate in a better way? Can they listen and how can we help you?
First of all, this project I'm representing is led by Ministry of Climate. So colleague Anni Martin, coordinator of the Buildest project, is also participating. You can discuss later with her. But here is one of the results of our project as well, the multi-level flood risk management framework, which is now being applied by the ministry as the flood directive in Estonia has been concentrating. Flood directive in Europe makes countries to plan national flood mitigation strategies, and until now, ministry has only focused on the coastal floods. Then this framework coming from this project has initiated country to also consider pluvial flooding, which is a big thing in Estonian cities and big thing in heritage protection areas, and start also assessing pluvial flooding risks of Estonian towns in the part of country's national flood management framework. So ministers do listen, so it's not so bad, I would say.
That's good, and thank you once more. And best greetings to Targo Kalamees, your professor, and many energy for him.